Well, welcome back, everybody, to Coffee, Cocktails, and Capitalism. I'm Morgan Reynolds, owner of Beyond the Trend Marketing Agency. And today I'm here with a very special guest, Ray Hooker of Indian River Distillery.
Got a question for you.
Yes,
Is
sir.
every guest a very special guest or just me?
I think sometimes I introduce them as friends or clients or new acquaintances. So technically, not everyone is a very special guest, Ray.
Okay. I
Um,
feel honored.
well, as a person who often provides me with delicious beverages, you really are a cut above the rest, I have to say. In both of our books, my husband also is a big fan of yours.
Compliment taken.
So, anyways, today we're going to talk with Ray a little bit about how he got from wherever he started in life to owning a distillery that makes some of the very best. Is it whiskey or bourbon?
Both.
Whiskey and bourbon and moonshine and gin that you will find. You'll see right here, this is Ray's bourbon. The
Ray Lim's Reserve.
Yes. I don't know if you guys can see that or not. On one of the cameras, I think you can. But we'll do a close-up shot too. Anyway, so that is what Ray is drinking. I am drinking a very special gin that he was kind enough to bring and let me sample today, but in the form of an old-fashioned. So if you didn't watch the video where we make the drinks, go watch the video where we make the drinks because they're delicious. So cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks for coming today.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, that's so nice. All right. So, Ray, let's start. Where were you born?
I was born in a faraway place called Vero Beach, Florida.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So, born and raised here. Did you ever live away from here for any length of
I
time?
never lived anywhere but Vero Beach, Florida, or Indian River County. You know, we kind of locals call everything Vero Beach around here, unless it's another incorporated area.
Right.
My family's from here. My dad was born here. My grandfather was born here. So we've been around for a while.
Wow. So at least 3 generations.
Yep, I would be the fourth.
Wow. So here, pull this a little closer to you just in case. You have to get all of your fabulous storytelling. So born and raised here, and is all the rest of your family still local? Do you have siblings around here?
The ones that are alive are local,
Okay.
for the most part.
So everybody really likes it here.
Yeah, it's a nice place.
It is a nice place. We feel fortunate to be here.
It's a lot more crowded than it used to be.
Well, I've heard tell of that.
I grew up, everything west of, well, where our distillery is, was orange groves and grapefruit groves.
Wow. Well, they keep talking about the citrus heritage. And in fact, the county is turning 100 this year. So it's the Indian River County Centennial. Was any of your family involved in the citrus?
No, we worked for citrus companies and packing houses, but no, there wasn't a lot of that. The heritage is citrus. The business was citrus, but citrus was part of most of our lives, whether it be trucking or, citrus work or grove maintenance or equipment maintenance. So there's all kinds of different categories that are related to citrus that aren't, necessarily citrus.
Right. I mean, that makes sense. Most towns or cities have at least one kind of specific corporation or industry that's kind of holding it all together.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't have that as much anymore.
We don't.
More is the pity, some would say. What about the, they try to say like cattle ranching is a big part of our community too.
Ranching was a huge part of our community.
Yeah.
And if you think back to, let's say, when, our town or our area really started booming, that would have been the early 1900s. That was, think 1900s Florida, no air conditioning, no mosquito control.
I can't even imagine.
And have you read the book Land Remembered?
Mm-mm.
So Patrick W. Smith wrote it's a historical fiction based on a few of the families from our area that were in early Florida. It goes back to a time and a particular part in the book to where they were moving some cattle across Florida, and the cattle were being suffocated by the amount of mosquitoes that were going into their nose. They couldn't breathe. There was that many mosquitoes.
Oh my gosh.
So there's been areas that I've hunted when I was a little bit younger that if the mosquitoes have been that way, you have to pull your shirt up over your face. So if you think about those people living in that time, some of those people had to really want to be here,
Yeah.
or were, I describe it as not quite right. Something not quite right about them. So when you meet somebody that is from a family or from heritage that was originally from Florida, you think there's something different about those people, and that's where it is.
Maybe more of the country knows the ins and outs of the pioneers that went out west and kind of their hardships, the Oregon Trail and, the Ozarks and Little House on the Prairie and all that. How many generations back would you say were people still kind of living pioneer-ish or settler-ish in Florida?
So,
like, when did we get air conditioning and the mosquito plane? Because that's kind of essential.
Control is 100 years old this year.
Oh my gosh, that's right. That's also having a centennial.
That's having a centennial, the sheriff department. And a lot of that is because Indian River County was originally St. Lucie County. Before that, it was Palm Beach County, and I think Mosquito County was this side of the state before that. So a lot of our areas, or a lot of our government entities in our area, are going to celebrate their 100-year anniversary this year too. Because
did you say that it was called Mosquito County?
It was Mosquito County. A large portion of this was Mosquito County. And our county was kind of carved out of those other counties because of the theater. Right over here. The theater wanted to be opened on Sunday.
Right.
And the St. Lucie County Sheriff and the St. Lucie County government, which was our government at that time, said, no, we're not open on Sunday. We're a fine, upstanding Southern community. That doesn't happen. And they opened anyway. So a lot of the principals from the theater were arrested one Sunday.
Oh my gosh.
Because they opened and wanted to have a show. So that's when some local people from our area started lobbying Tallahassee to make this its own county. And Indian River County was born out of that. Martin County was born.
Right. Don't they call that like a blue law?
Blue law, yeah.
Yeah. I went to college in Kentucky.
Okay.
And that was still very much the norm.
Can't spit on the sidewalk, can't buy beer.
Can't buy alcohol on Sundays. Yeah. And it came from, in the olden days, they would literally put a blue tarp over the alcohol at the general store so that you could not purchase it on a Sunday type of thing. So I'm well acquainted. That's very interesting that, eradicating mosquitoes and drinking booze were the foundations of our civilization.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
And, if you think about it too, Prohibition happened in Florida about 10 years before it happened in the rest of the country.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So by the time Prohibition hit in full swing, the Florida boys were good at it. So we had already been doing that for...
You guys were like the legacy founders of the Prohibition movement.
And then they send somebody down to, like you said, the Oregon Trail. We have alligators and mosquitoes. So who are they going to send to enforce that?
Nobody wants that job. No. When we first moved to Florida, my husband and I was from Chicago, born and raised. And I'd wanted my whole life to live in Florida. I wanted to go to school here. My parents said, no, that's too far away. And we finally came down here, and I love hiking, right? Well, you can hike in the Midwest and there's nothing that's going to hurt you, right? Maybe a black widow spider if you're really unlucky. And that's like it, right? But so we started going hiking on these trails, and we just kept saying, it's like we're in Jurassic Park. Like truly like you've stepped back in time in a lot of places, which is very cool because there's so few places in the country where you can really experience kind of nature the way it was originally created in a lot of ways.
So my son Chandler is 16 years old. We've homeschooled him his entire life. And kind of the principle of what I always said when we would go outside and get in nature is go find a stick and poke something. Because, that's me being funny, but we really want you to go out and learn about your environment and learn about the things around you. And a little bit of a story from when he was, I think Chandler was 6. We went to have dinner at a friend's house, and they had some kids that were similar age, and they lived in one of these planned communities that have the lake in the center. And, myself and the husband were out back and having a beer and at the barbecue grill, and the kids were playing in the backyard, and they ran down towards the lake. And the immediate thing he said to the kids were, there's an alligator down there, don't go.
Okay.
To prevent his kids from going to the lake, to scare them. And my son was like, Dad, there's an alligator. Let's go check it out.
Oh, right.
You know, so I
Yeah.
said, I'm sorry, don't say that. And he says, and he said it again. And I said, hey, listen, we don't lie to our kids. My kid's not scared of an alligator. If there's a dangerous animal out there, he wants to know about it, identify it, and find out how to deal with it.
Right.
That's not how we raise our children. And the guy he didn't really understand it.
Yeah.
It was just the easy way for him to scare his kids to get back into the
Well, right. Because if you're a parent, if you're offering your kid opportunities to kind of confront things that might potentially be unsafe, you're teaching them quite a bit more, but then you have to be a lot more hands-on, I guess, in the process,
You
right?
can't be lazy.
Right. Well, I mean, we're not calling parents out. Everybody's got to deal with what, however they can deal. But no, that's great. So so your whole family is pretty outdoorsy, you would say. And you were in landscaping and pest control, right? Was that kind of like your first real job out of like high school, or
No,
would you get into that?
Uncle had a landscaping company when I was 12 or 13, and had summertime work opportunities, so I would go work, for him or with him when I was 12. But I really wanted to be a welder. I was fascinated by that. There was a technical program at our college, and I went through all of the steps. I was a certified Mercruiser marine mechanic and a certified welder when I graduated, or when I left high school.
Okay.
I got really frustrated in school, hence us homeschooling our child. I dropped out when I was 16 and went to night school, and I actually had my diploma at 16 years old.
Wow. Okay.
So the big industry that we had in town where a welder could, my opinion, thrive would have been Piper Aircraft. So a little bit after my 18th birthday, I got hired on a Piper Aircraft, and I worked there for a few years.
Okay, cool.
I learned I hated it. I hated being inside. Working in an environment where seniority ruled instead of it was how long you were there compared to the amount of work you did or the quality of work you did. And that drove me nuts.
Yeah. A lot more structure, a lot more hierarchy, a more corporate feeling, probably.
And, I could do 3 or 4 times the work of somebody that had been there 20 years longer than me, and they made more money than me. They got all the benefits.
Right.
So my younger brother had worked for a local pest control company. It was Spencer Pest Control. They were one of the bigger local companies in town. It was female owned and operated. And he said, hey, we had an opening, and, it's weird the way that they pay us. They pay you on commission, the amount of work that you do. And I had never heard of that.
You're like, what is this new concept?
What is this concept? And
that's cool.
I went and I interviewed with Sherry Spencer, and we hit it off pretty quick right away. And she hired me, and I was the dumbest employee at Piper Aircraft. I quit. Piper Aircraft was the place that you really wanted to work. There was structure there, and there was benefit there. Everybody wanted to get a job with you.
Well,
the county
you're
or
saying
Piper
that
Aircraft.
a little tongue in cheek. Who was telling you that you were being stupid?
Everybody,
like
I
your
worked
parents.
with.
Or...
No, everybody I worked with at Piper.
Okay.
With this job, they're paying you great. You get a paycheck every week. And I left, and I worked for the local pest control company, and I got long legs, and I walk fast. I smile, and I talk to people, and I do what I say I'm going to do. So I became pretty successful. That time was in the pest control industry there was a lot of companies that did things the old way. So you knock on the door and you smile real big, and you spray the baseboard all the way around the house, and you came every month and you did that. And I was really good at that. And then I started, researching and going to conferences and learning that, hey, there's a different way to do things. And you can only do this amount of work in a month's time.
Yeah.
But if you do every other month service instead of monthly service, you can do twice as many customers.
That is true.
And then in quarterly, you can do 3 times as many customers. So I brought it to Sherry and I said, hey, I really think I can do this. I can do, every other month work, right? We've done monthly for years, but, we could lose a lot of customers. Not if you do all of these things.
Yeah.
The chemistry of the products, they work a lot better now than they did 30 years ago. So I transitioned my route over to every other month, and all of a sudden I am twice as profitable as every other technician she has.
Wow.
So, hey, Ray, can you teach everybody else how to do this? And then I go to her and say, I think we could do quarterly service. I think the customers will be happy, and I can do 3 times the amount of service that I originally did. So during this time, that was the transition in the industry. And, it was, okay, well, technicians aren't hired the old way anymore. Their percentage is less. Their percentage is less because they're doing a bigger book of business. So the new people she hired and I trained, she kind of, would back their percentage down and back their bonuses down. And when she would try to do that to me, I would say,
you were a part of getting it there.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And she left me alone for a lot of years. But I started to kind of get bored, and I started to think, well, I'm being paid a percentage of this whole, I could take the whole thing. She doesn't do anything as a business owner. She just cashes checks all the time. So I can do that. So
yes, if only.
And so I left, and I started a landscaping company in pest control.
Okay.
And
isn't that kind of an investment to buy like landscaping equipment and stuff like that?
Sure.
Yeah. Did you have to do like a loan or?
Yep, I put it all on a Discover credit card and
nice.
got rolling.
Okay, there you go.
And started knocking on doors. I would say 2 years before we sold it, we had 19 employees.
Oh, wow.
And I did very little landscaping. I was mostly doing, managing employees and driving around and doing customer relations and, social media, things like that.
Okay. And then you decided alcohol was calling your name.
Alcohol was calling my name. I was over 40. Had been in that type of work most of my life. My body was taking a beating, and I wanted something new to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
When we started planning, I think 2014, a couple of friends and myself got together and started building stills. We shouldn't have been doing that.
I mean, that's like 10 years ago now. So it's been a minute.
Yeah. It's been now.
Okay.
So each of us built stills. Some were better than others. And we kind of passed them back and forth.
Like how big is like an at-home still?
So the ones we were building were based off of the beer keg. So, this big around and this tall.
Yeah.
And we would put it on a turkey fryer burner. And, fill the still on top of it, because that's the actual kettle is the beer keg. The thing on top is the still. And I would say out of the 3 of us, I was probably the better at actually running it and having an interest in it, but the others were better at building the actual still parts.
Interesting.
We kind of got together and were chatting and all drinking because they made this cool thing. I made this cool thing. Hey, I think people would buy this. I think people are interested in seeing this. So I'm going to research the laws in Florida for going legit and being able to do this.
To sell the stills or the alcohol?
The alcohol, to sell the alcohol.
What were you guys making in the stills?
A little bit of everything. I made a lot of rum, a lot of whiskeys. And when you think about bourbon is a type of whiskey. Scotch is a type of whiskey. So whiskey is a spirit that's distilled from grain. Rum is a spirit that's distilled from sugarcane. And vodka is made from anything and all of the flavors. So,
what is most vodka made from, though? Corn?
There's a lot that are made from corn. Wheat is the cheapest grain, so a lot of it's made from wheat. Some are made from potato, sugarcane,
Yeah.
Generally, it's whatever you can get for cheap because you process it so much that the base grain really has little impact upon it.
Yeah.
Vodka is generally made better by the filtration process. So carbon filtration or, the different super duper filtration techniques that everybody think of for marketing.
Yeah.
That's where the vodka's made.
Okay.
But I talked to them and I said, hey guys, we should do this for a business. Most of them said, hell no. They didn't want to do that. So myself and Mandy thought, hey, we can do this. So let's start a business plan, because at that time we had been in business for, over 10 years. I didn't do a business plan initially on the landscaping and pest control company, but about 4 or 5 years in, I did a business plan, and that was probably the most beneficial process to do in a business, to learn about your market, to learn about yourself, to learn about your policies and procedures and all the different things that you have in place. So we did a business plan. And at that time in Florida, you were able to sell 2 bottles per person per year. And the onus of tracking that to the general public.
Right. So I could buy 2 bottles a year.
You could buy 2 bottles per year. So the onus of tracking that was on the distillery, and the state would come in and audit you and make sure you didn't oversell and bypass the 3-tier distribution process. So
that's direct sales. Otherwise, you have to go through a distributor.
Yeah. Otherwise, you have to go through a distributor, and they keep, between the distributor and the retailer, they keep about 60% of the retail price of the product. So we thought, okay, well, we can make that work. We obviously need to go through distribution and take a smaller margin. And that's kind of the plan that we were proceeding with. And then the law changed to where you could sell 7 bottles per person, and a little tweak in the language. It was 7 bottles per person per label.
Okay.
So I thought, okay, well, you know what? We can create a little local market, and I can change the label. So this will be Raylan's Reserve Bourbon, and this will be Raylan's Reserve Bourbon Whiskey, and this will be Michelin's,
right, kind of
you can change the name and change the recipe and
reinvent
it. And then, you could sell quite a few bottles that way.
Yeah.
I thought, okay, we can make this work. And then, so we started trying to put the distillery together. Originally, we were looking at Building 78 over by Burbage Regional Airport, which is an old Navy building, and started putting it together. And we realized pretty quickly that was diluting our current business too much.
How so?
So I couldn't focus on the business the way I needed to.
Oh, you were trying to do this in addition to
the other business. Yeah. And it diluted us way down. And I was scared we were going to start losing quality of service, losing the connection we have with our employees.
Right.
And it just wasn't going to work. So we then made the decision to start optimizing our business for sale. Because if if you start selling a business, that's different than running a business.
Right. It's got to look a little different on paper.
It's got to look way different on paper. And then you need to start putting things in place, because when somebody needs to buy a business, they want to buy a business, not a job.
Right.
So you need to make sure management is trained and you have all the different levels.
It kind of has to just be fully operating.
It needs to be able to be managed, not ran.
Yeah.
So that's what we started doing. And you want to see certain margins. You want things to look a certain way for a while, because when you're limiting your tax liability with a business, you really don't want to, on paper look like you're making a lot of money. So you have to really adjust those things.
And balance things out. Yeah.
So you have to pay, a big tax burden for a couple of years. We did that, sold our business, and that was after COVID. And we were one of the businesses that were not really harmed during COVID. Right. So we were it was a desirable business for somebody to purchase.
Yeah. So was it worth it to kind of, it is work to optimize a business to sell it, building a business to sell versus just having a business that you enjoy is really, really different. I mean, are you glad that you kind of did it that way?
I'm not enjoying this one quite yet. This is new, you know.
You're looking back at what you had, like, oh, maybe that wasn't so bad.
Well, I was on Easy Street. I
Yeah.
really was. We were in our 14th year of being in business, so I
Oh,
was
wow, yeah.
really good at it. Um, Customer base wise, I wrote my own ticket. I went and found the customers that I wanted, and they were glad to have us. We charged a premium for our service. But I just wasn't enjoying myself. I wasn't being challenged. I'm glad I did that. Starting a new business, this business was bootstrapped. It was, us doing it, us, paying for everything. I'm my HR guy. I'm my marketing guy. I'm my maintenance guy. I was my builder for the most part.
Wow.
This has been, it's been a lot of work. And, when we did our first business, I was 27 years old, 28 years old, somewhere in there, and 30 roughly, and now I'm 45 years old. That's a big difference. I need sleep now. I didn't need sleep.
You don't quite
before.
spring out of bed the same way in the morning. Now I feel
your
that.
back hurts and your knees hurt. And, it's
you don't even
different.
know why. You're like, what did I even do?
Why is my body mad at me?
Right.
And I haven't been healthy I've been rough on my body.
Yeah.
I do, combat sports. I've done a lot of hog hunting when I was younger, which is running through the woods and, wrestling wild hogs by hand. And, that's tough on your body. And you don't realize that in your 20s and 30s.
Right.
But 40th birthday hits, it's
start to feel a little bit.
Does my neck hurt?
Yeah, it starts to catch up.
We talked earlier. Why am I an inch shorter than I was?
Right.
Because I put a beating on my back and neck.
Yeah. So you are able to be less physical in the current job,
I know.
But it's got its own kind of share. To me, the alcohol business is just so fascinating that it's so regulated. The regulations constantly change, and every state is different, and every type of setup is different. And I love being able to talk to all the different business owners we have in town that serve alcohol. And it feels like everyone has like their own journey to get to a place where they can share alcoholic beverages with the public.
It's tough. And when the laws changed with the distilleries from that 2 bottles to the 7 bottles, the Florida Craft Spirits Association, Phil from St. Augustine Distillery, which was one of the early distilleries, and Matt from St. Pete Distillery had been lobbying the state to get these laws changed. They're in very touristy areas. So they wanted their tasting rooms to become more profitable versus distribution. So they got the law changed with our legislator to where we could do 75,000 gallons through our tasting room. That's not for me. There's no way I'm ever going to do that. That's obviously for St. Pete and St. Augustine. And you can serve cocktails of products that you produce.
Right.
So instead of having what's called a 4COP license, which after Prohibition, they allow a certain amount of licenses to serve distilled spirits in a particular county, dependent upon population, they allow us to bypass that because we're serving the specific products that we produce. So we are an unlicensed bar, basically.
Right. But you call it a tasting room. And you are a distillery.
We are a distillery.
So these are all this terminology is important.
It is.
In the industry.
The idea was that you're serving products that you produce and you make in-house and supporting local Florida agriculture by trying to use agriculture to create those products.
Interesting. So the 75 gallons.
75,000 gallons.
Yeah, 75,000 gallons. You don't have to sell that much, right? No, but
that's your upper tier limit.
The cap, yeah. I thought I heard recently, I might be wrong, but that there was going to be less of a limit on how many per county can serve alcohol. Because, we may have to cut this part out. I might be wrong, but because Kilted just got theirs through the state. But I know that a lot of licenses for this area are privately owned already.
They are privately owned because they're offered through a lottery. And I know somebody that owns a half dozen of those licenses.
And we're probably thinking of the same person.
And then they lease them out. Yeah. They lease them out to a business, which is a great way to make money. But
yeah. I mean, it's like a real estate investment. People do that with domain names now. I mean, there's all kinds of things where it's like there's a limited amount and therefore people kind of stockpile it and then, are able to make residuals, and that's capitalism, right? Okay, but you have this delicious distillery. You make, let's just go down the list. You make your own Coca-Cola like product.
Yep.
Cola is the word we're allowed to use. Your own syrups and citrus mixes, blends, lime, and lemon, all those things.
We go through all this work to make these distilled spirits, the rum, the whiskey, the corn whiskey, the vodka, the gin. I cannot see using pork base ingredients when so much thought and so much of me goes into those products. So why am I going to get Coca-Cola and put it in my cocktail? Why am I going to go buy Tropicana juice? So I feel that through every step of the process, we need to be hands-on and using good, solid base ingredients with what we're building. So all of the syrups, all of the colas, all of that stuff we make in-house.
Yeah. So like for example, my husband is not a big drinker and usually he's my DD. So he loves to just come and drink the cola at your shop. So yeah, that's a huge win. So tip for the non-drinkers, or if you're doing a dry month or, you're trying to get summer ready or whatever you're doing, there's lots of really delicious homemade beverages there that are non-alcoholic as well.
And a good relaxed atmosphere. Our first year we did a moonshine day. And so we have all of our products, our Raylands Reserve Bourbon, our Hibiscus City Gin. It was important to me to use these products to try to teach our local history.
Yeah.
To the tourists.
Actually, pause that real quick. Have another sip of your beverage. Dane, are you able to grab the Hibiscus Gin bottle off the thing there? We should have that out here. I didn't even think about that. So I'm sorry. Yes, we're celebrating our local heritage with the labels
and history on everything that we do. So our corn whiskey, our moonshine whiskey is the Notorious Ashley Gang moonshine whiskey. And the Notorious Ashley Gang was kind of
we'll cut to him. You don't have to be in it.
The Notorious Ashley Gang moonshine corn whiskey is based from John Ashley and the Ashley Gang, which was one of those things that I think shaped the rebellious nature of early Florida. And another one of those reasons when you think Florida people just aren't quite right on the national arena. Well, it's things like
this. Are we talking about Florida man lore?
This is Florida man lore. It really is. It's before it was methed out guys in Miami. It was gangsters. It really was.
Yeah.
And Florida had prohibition happen before most of the other states. So like I said, we were good at this. When the Ashley Gang was in full swing in Florida, all of the non-Florida booze and all of the non-Florida spirits stopped. These guys said, we're going to be Florida. Everything is going to happen in Florida. So when, McCoy, from the phrase real McCoy, had his ships off the coast of Florida, that's why. It wasn't the government they were worried about. It was these guys and these gangsters in Florida.
Interesting. I believe that.
Yeah.
Is that McCoy from the Hatfields and McCoys?
No, I think it's a different group.
Different McCoy? Yeah. Okay.
And there's a real, the phrase the real McCoy, it comes from that because when he was doing, there was a line of ships that would go off the coast of the eastern United States of Caribbean rum and, a few other things that would be on the ships. And people would take their boats out there and get this during Prohibition and take it back.
Get it right off the boat.
Look at something because there was swill that was out there. And they said, no, this is the real McCoy. It's because it came from McCoy.
Interesting.
he was a trusted person in the rum industry.
That is so cool.
So none of that stuff was allowed to happen. The Ashley gang, John Ashley, Ray Lynn, Hanford Mobley, and the rest, Laura Up the Grove, they are the only gangs that actually have mounted an attack on the British Crown.
Interesting.
So in the Bahamas, there was an island, and they mounted an attack, and they went over to the British Isles, and they took what they wanted from them. Nobody to mess with them.
So crazy.
So where are you going to go? You're going to go to the Everglades and chase these guys?
Right?
Oh, they don't want that.
We have our own built-in moats here, literally.
Yep.
Full
With
of
alligators
gators.
in them.
Full of gators.
Sharks with laser beams on them.
Right.
Yeah.
The cocaine sharks will get you.
The cocaine sharks will get you. It's alligators with cocaine and laser beams.
Right. No, we have it all here.
Yeah.
This is like a fortress in Florida, basically. So my personal favorite alcohol that you have, I don't have it up here actually, is it's the white moonshine.
Moonshine, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And sometimes you do it with like some lime juice and things like that, and it's just chef's kiss.
Infantante is the cocktail.
What does that mean?
I don't know.
Oh, what's right?
I'm not
Who
sure.
named it?
I think Michael named
Who's in charge of that? That makes a lot of
I think
sense,
Mike-
actually.
Michael named it.
That doesn't shock
It's a
me.
great cocktail, but
Yes.
it's not what I drink.
Well, you
whiskey.
drink the rotary thing.
I do drink the Rotary.
What is the rotary thing?
Okay, one
Ray
classic-
is also the president of the largest Rotary Club in the land. Yes. So even though we have a lot of fun talking about booze and Main Street, we do also Rotary slips its way into everything.
So Sunrise Rotary Club of Vero Beach is the biggest Rotary Club in our county by at least double.
Yeah, it's
we have
huge by comparison.
97 members. And by the way, why haven't you visited?
It's a story for another time.
Okay.
This is not my interview. We're interviewing you. So anyway, tell us about the
This
Rotary
is a
Club.
give and take, Morgan. So,
I'm president of Main Street. I have no more time to give.
okay, you don't have to be president of Rotary.
No, I can't even attend anything else. I have a stack of Main Street things in there that I made myself wait until after 5 to do.
So the cool part
So I have to
about
run my own
Sunrise Rotary is the meeting starts at 7 a.m. and it's over by 8, so you can go about your business day after that.
I'm not alive at that hour.
But anyways, I
Told Richard this too. Don't invite me to bank things or Sunrise Rotary things.
I've been a Rotarian for 20 years this year.
Okay, that's a long time.
That is a long time.
Yes.
I joined when I was at Spencer Pest Control
Okay.
for a brief stint. I needed to be a salesman because I wanted to learn different things and I was getting kind of bored.
Mhm.
And one of the rules were I had to join a networking group and a service group. And
Okay.
a local gentleman named Buddy Dawson said, "Hey, I'm in Rotary. You should come check it out."
Mhm.
So he sponsored me into the Rotary Club. A couple of years later, they made me president because I was the guy that said, "Oh, okay."
You're right.
And so this is my second run as president.
Oh, wow. You're allowed to do that?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's encouraged. They ask you to be president a lot.
Okay.
It's a good mix of people. There's young business people in there.
Mhm.
There's older business people in there. And I like to tell people that Rotary has been one of the best things for me business-wise over the years. It's been so profitable in ways that you can't understand because of the mentorship and the relationships. It's not direct like a networking group would be to where you would say, I gave you this referral and you gave me that referral.
Yeah.
It's very much of, I explained this to you and I introduced you to this person and I helped you through this problem in your business because, we look at Rotary as a bunch of grumpy old men, but those grumpy old men are pretty smart. They've done a lot of things. And you probably figured out about me that I'm pretty humble and I don't know everything. And
Yeah. If you're willing to ask for help, they're ready to give it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the creator gave us 2 ears and one mouth, so shut up and listen with some of these guys.
It's so true.
If you shut up and listen, you're going to learn a lot. I'm friends with, a lot of local, business people, a lot of local, politicians and government people, and people that came here from other places that were Rotarians, that were, on big corporations like GM or, Frito-Lay, that are in big business also, that just, they want to help. They want to tell you. They want to explain things to you. So shut up and listen to these people.
Yeah.
Even though they're grumpy old men.
Well, they survived this long somehow, right? They learned a few things along the way. I do think in general that's something that Vero has in spades, and it's harder to come by maybe in other places, but it's easier to kind of tap into the wisdom of your elders, so to speak.
Absolutely.
In this community. And I, for one, have benefited tremendously from that since I moved here. So I can really appreciate it. And, there's a lot of places where there's not that mix of kind of older, especially very successful people. Very successful people are attracted to this particular community. They've retired here, they moved their families down here, what have you. So this is a good spot to kind of pick up on a lot of worldly knowledge for pennies on the dollar kind of thing.
So somebody interesting that I met 10 or 15 years ago in the landscape business, somebody referred me to a customer, and I wasn't really happy about the guy that referred me because I didn't like the way that they did business. But, I took the referral anyway. I talked to the guy. He seemed like a nice guy. He really did. Had a big house, a lot of landscaping, and he very much just wanted things handled and didn't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
So I gave him a price. I probably overpriced it a little bit. And because I didn't really want to deal with it.
I understand.
And the guy...
Well, that's something they tell you when you're in business for yourself. It was, if you don't want a job, just charge an outrageous number and see if they take it.
See if they take it.
Yeah.
And, he says, I'd like to work with you, this guy. Yeah, I'd like to work with you, but your price is a little high. What are you doing for that price? Justify it. And I said, okay, well, I'm used to that, but okay, we're doing this and that and the other. And by the way, you're dealing with me. Every week I will be here. I'm going to communicate with you. And he said, okay. Great. Perfect.
Did that turn out to be a good client?
It turned out to be one of my favorite clients because I could communicate with him. We had a level of trust. And he did not mind paying me for what I did. And
that's great.
At that same time, I was starting to learn about single malt whiskey. So I found a single malt whiskey that was the biggest bang for the buck, and it was called Bunhaven, which was Islay Scotch. And it wasn't overly peated. It was really good, and it was $35 a bottle, which was ridiculous for a single malt Scotch.
Okay, real quick, explain to the people at home what the different malt levels mean.
Okay, so first let's explain what malt is. Malt is a grain that has been sprouted. So the Mother Nature has released enzymes into that grain and started to turn the starches from the grain into sugars.
Right.
Sugar is then distilled.
It's not a seed. Now it's like a little bit of a growing plant.
It's still a seed. But
okay.
Yeah, it's still a seed. So in the industry, when you say malt, you're talking about barley for the most part.
So it's distilled from barley.
It's distilled from malted barley.
Malted
barley, because you still have barley that hasn't been malted yet.
Okay.
So single malt grain would be a malted barley whiskey that has been distilled at one distillery in one season.
And that's better.
That's better. In my opinion, it's better because then
don't people usually charge more? I mean, that's kind of...
Yeah. Then you
if you're ordering a single malt Scotch, isn't that better than...
it's something
Never heard
came
anyone
from.
order a multi-malt scotch.
No, you would say I would like a scotch,
Right.
which that's the signal to the person
I would
giving
like
it to
a
you.
3-malt
It's
scotch,
blended
please.
scotch. So Johnny Walker is a blended scotch.
Right.
Dewar's is a blended scotch. So that's multiple distilleries that are blended together. And I kind of poo-pooed that, but now that I'm a grown up, I understand that there's an art to blending too. Johnny Walker Blue is an excellent whiskey. It's good. It's not the same.
Right.
It's different. It's awesome in a completely different way.
Right.
So I had this whiskey Bunhaben, and I was talking to Mr. Ryan about this, or Mr. So-and-so about this, and he was the CFO of Prudential that brought them out of bankruptcy. He was on the board of the Royal Bank of Scotland. Just a super, a self-made man, but a super successful person. And he says, I've never heard of that. Let me get you this. So he would bring me a $300 bottle of scotch at his house, a $500 bottle of scotch, $1,000 bottle.
Oh my gosh.
And he's like, people buy me this stuff to impress me, and it really doesn't. But here, have this, Ray. So I think in one time, it was a 2-week period. He gave me, thousands of dollars worth of rare single malt whiskeys.
Wow.
And I was like, wow. So I brought him. I went and I splurged for the Bunhaben. That was a little bit more expensive.
Really
I think it was
in.
$80.
Oh my gosh.
And I gave it to him, and he said, yeah, right, thanks. I've been drinking a lot of red wine lately, so I'll get to it. And I went there the next week, and I said, did you try that scotch? No, I was busy. I was down at the club. And
yeah.
the next week, oh, sorry, Ray, I got to do that next week. I'll make it a point to do it next week. And then that next week I go, and he's sitting on the porch waiting for me. I had no idea. That was amazing scotch. What did you pay for that? And I said, I paid $85. And he starts laughing, and he said, I'd never heard of Bunhaben before. But when I really started asking about it, that's one of the original Islay distilleries that are used in some of the blends. Great whiskey, thank you. And then I go, a couple of months later to buy a bottle of Bunhaben, and it's $45, and then it's $65, and then it's just a movement towards this whiskey getting more popular, and it's gotten more expensive. And now I think
he told all his rich friends.
A Bunhaben 12 is now like $90 or $100 for a bottle, but I didn't learn about that on my own. Somebody else told me about that. I wasn't the one that created that. I just learned about this new brand of whiskey that was just an undiscovered gem.
Yeah.
And now it's pretty popular, but that created a pretty good relationship with that super successful business person, that there was a lot of times when we weren't talking specifically about this whiskey that I would pick up on little things here and there. And we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. So it's shut up and listen,
You can learn so much when you read between the lines of what people are actually saying.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yep. And even just, if you keep your eyes and ears open when you're visiting people at their places of business, you can pick up on so much that's never taught in a classroom. That's just invaluable. I know my business has been really impacted from stuff like that. So, all right, before we end today, tell us what you are currently working on over there.
Okay. We just released the 100-year edition of Raylan's Reserve Bourbon Whiskey.
Ooh.
So that is a blend of an Indiana bourbon that we handpicked.
Okay.
And our first batch of malted wheat bourbon.
Ooh.
So
obviously, how is that different from like this guy here?
Okay, that guy there is the one that I like. It's 110 proof.
Yes, this is the one that you carry around in your back pocket.
Exactly. Right. I have a truck bottle of that.
We may or may not drink this at Main Street meetings, not endorsed, not paid for, whatever.
That's 110 proof, but 100 years, 100 bottles, 110 proof sounds stupid. So I blended it at 100 proof and found the perfect spot with the blend for that. Mm-hmm. So we did 100 special bottles, 100 proof for 100 years of Indian River County. Mm-hmm. And we've got it in a special packaging, a nice box that we stained ourselves and had a local
It's very pretty.
Did you see the box?
I did. Yeah. Go look on social media.
On social media.
Very cool.
Facebook.com/IR Distillery. And I do a lot of the social media stuff. So the silly videos is normally me goofing off. I actually kind of have fun.
So go see Ray's real talent on Facebook.
My real talent is Facebook and Instagram. But I've learned that Facebook is the popular one locally. Instagram
it really is
nationally it's Instagram, but locally because we have an older population, which recently we're part of that now.
No, stop it.
So I goof off on Facebook, but the 100-year centennial bottle, that's important to me because it's bringing a lot of people that aren't history buffs into our local history and learning about it. I have a bar gin that I'm doing. I ran out of gin a couple of weeks ago.
The hibiscus
Everybody's
gin.
harassing me about it.
There's lots of gin drinkers in the county.
There's some gin drinkers, but they're all kind of loud and they complain a lot.
We're committed. We're committed to our gin drinking.
Gin was something that really caught me off guard. Because I'm a whiskey guy and a rum guy, gin to me was a bunch of flowers and crap mixed in vodka.
I will tell you, I did not like gin until last year.
Was it our gin that did it? No. Okay. I'm glad somebody's gin did it.
Well, it was just like store-bought gin, but all of a sudden, and it's like, as you grow, your tastes really do change and evolve. So if you're not trying new things all the time, you're really missing out. But like, I didn't like pickles until like a year ago. Like, I don't know, all my tastes changed. But somebody gave me I know where it was. We were down in Miami, a girlfriend and I, and then we were at this restaurant and we ordered whatever drinks were on the menu, some type of weird rum situation. And neither one of us liked it. And then the waitress walked by and it was a giant fish bowl with like a very thin layer of cucumber lining the inside and, like a little, lime garnish and, some herb leaves and stuff. Like put an herb in a drink and I'm good, right? Like any kind of herb. And we both looked at it, we're like, what are they having? And it was like a gin and tonic with cucumber and lime, and I think it was like basil or something. And it just looked so cool. We're like, okay, like just give us whatever that is. And it was so delicious. We still talk about it to this day, like 3 years later. And it was whatever restaurant that was. I want to say it was I'm not going to remember the name. I'll maybe put it in the description. But the owners opened another a sister restaurant in Winter Park right up here, which is kind of cool. So anyway, you never know when whoever the bartender is or whoever, the, drinks person is, whatever you're creating could become somebody's new favorite and really, kind of become a part of their whole lifestyle and stuff, which is kind of fun.
I think most of us, when we were younger, tried the gin that we saw sitting in our parents' liquor cabinet, which was Beefeaters or some London Dry gin.
And if heaven forbid
like pine needles.
Yes, the juniper flavor, right, is not appealing. And, craft gin is always better than anything off the shelf. And it makes a huge, huge difference.
So I left gin till last. At our place, and because again it was a bunch of pine needles and crap mixed in vodka.
Totally fair.
It's easy.
Totally fair.
And then I started playing with it more because I had a compound gin that I really liked, which is compound gin is gin that you just macerate herbs into, blend together, and get the final product. I thought, okay, I like this, so let me turn it into a small batch of gin. So we use one of the little small stills and you make it. And then I start like scaling those recipes up. And none of those individual botanicals scale at the same rate. So nothing is linear. So if you take this recipe for gin you have that's in a 10-gallon batch that makes a gallon of gin and you use a tangerine peel in there, that doesn't mean when you go up to 300 gallons that you use 30 tangerine.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So you're going to use like 3 or 5 tangerine peels. And because you use, 10 pounds of juniper in that. That doesn't mean you're going to use like 300 pounds.
Yeah.
So those all scale at a completely different rate.
Hmm.
So how you find that out?
Right.
And, you know, the botanical load of a batch of gin is somewhere in, you know, a big batch that we do. I probably have roughly $600 in botanicals in that.
Oh my gosh. So
So
what all goes into like this flavor or the new one that you're
I'm
doing?
going to do something cool because I'm doing the gin. So I'm going to tell you my exact gin recipe
Oh my gosh.
because this is
like a coffee cocktails and capitalism exclusive.
no something that is new in the spirits industry is being transparent in what you do because everybody seems to have a guarded thing.
Right. They're secret.
In the brewery industry,
recipe.
everybody kind of, shares their information because they understand that you're not going to do it the same way. So I've tried to tell everybody exactly what I do because if there's another distiller around, I'm going to give you that. I'm going to give you that so you can make it happen and it's going to make you better. And you know what? If you do that gin recipe better than I do it, I need to up my game a little bit.
Right.
That means I'm not as good as I think. I thank you for challenging me.
That's how we all get better.
So the recipe behind that is we use cane neutral spirits. I macerate the blackberry root, which is 8 ounces of blackberry root, 35 pounds of juniper, 4 ounces of holy basil, 8 ounces of bitter orange peel, 4 ounces of angelica root. And I macerate that in a high proof spirit. That's 110 proof. So I take neutral and I macerate it in there under agitation for 12 hours.
Okay.
And then I water that down until it's 40 proof, so 20% ABV. And then I start heating the still up.
Okay.
And then I take the still off of that. Your first little bit coming off the still is going to take kind of funky. So you don't want to keep that. Then once it starts tasting good, start collecting that spirit off of that. It's going to be high proof that you're taking off of there, which is good. Then I turn on our gin basket and I put more juniper, more holy basil, and more blackberry root in.
Okay.
So I run that vapor through the gin basket and through those botanicals, and we start collecting that off. There's going to be a particular point towards the end of the run that things are going to start tasting like stewed vegetables. It's just terrible. You don't want that at all.
You don't want that. No.
Turn your gin basket off.
Okay.
Because it's the gin basket that's starting to cook.
Yeah.
Taste that
too
way.
much. Yeah.
So the stuff coming off the still is still really good. So then you're going to be able to collect the rest off of that.
Okay. Interesting. So is the blackberry root, is that kind of unique or does everybody put blackberry root in
No,
gin?
that's unique. So the recipe, the only thing that's consistent, what I would say in a normal gin that we use is the angelica root and the
juniper.
The juniper. Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting. That is so cool.
Yeah.
Well, it's fitting that we talked so much about all the centennial things because you and I are a part of helping to bring the Grand Centennial Parade to Main Street, which is really exciting. And you have some experience in parading.
A little bit, yeah.
Yes. So are you guys going to do a float or something, maybe?
Are you adding to things I already have to do?
3 generations, you told me, that this county has of the Hooker family.
I'm declaring now that Indian River Distillery is going to do a float in the Centennial Parade.
Yay!
There's a balance there. That means I can't help as much with the running of the parade because I'm going to be doing the float. And by the way, Hooker is an adopted name for me.
Okay.
Because my stepfather adopted us when I was 12.
Oh,
and he was the best dad I could ever have. He's the one that actually raised us. Wow. My family name locally is Kersey, Kersey.
Okay.
And most of them were not great people. So that's why stepdad took over and raised us.
Okay. That's cool.
So Kersey is the name you're going to see on gravestones all over the place.
Interesting. Yeah. but hooker is the legacy that you are building for future generations.
That's exactly right.
That's
My
very
son's a
cool.
hooker.
That's
Yeah.
right. In a good way.
In a good way. In a good way. Yeah.
Well, Ray, I super appreciate this. Is there anything else you want to tell people? Tell them where your distillery is, where they can find you, your hours, all those good things.
3308 Aviation Boulevard by the Vero Beach Regional Airport.
Yep.
Right on the corner.
Mhm.
It's a small indescript industrial style building. Come inside and visit and be comfortable.
Well, the
experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, they always have great music playing there. There's some really cool, interesting artists. It's a very friendly vibe. Look for the sunset logo on the outside of the building. And if you're ever in my neck of the woods, come by. I'll always have something on the shelf. So thanks, Ray. All right. Cheers. See you guys next time.
You got it.